Hello, Sophie. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Ian. Great to be here. And apologies I couldn't be with you last week. Unfortunately, we did have a hold on our comms because of the sad passing of the Duke of Edinburgh, but I'm really glad we get to sit down today, and thank you for having me on Fly Live.
It's a pleasure. It's taken a while, but we're very, very glad to have you here. So let's get straight into it and kick off. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you come from, what you do, kind of your role.
Sure. So I've been at the CAA for 5 years now. I joined the CAA and I started by heading up the corporate strategy function. I looked after strategy, risk and better regulation. And then after about 2 years, I moved across into the safety and airspace regulation group, which we call SARG, and set up the new drone unit, which we call the UAS unit. And that really was a brand new unit for us to house all of the kind of technical policy, the oversight that we were doing for drones. And I've been running that for the last 3 years. And then for the last 5 months, I've also been heading up General Aviation Unit, which has been fantastic because there is, quite a lot of parallels about some of the things we're trying to tackle, things like access to airspace. There's a lot of things that actually I think we are looking at from different angles, such as infrastructure. So it's been very interesting to look at the two together.
You've been in post for about 6 months now, as I understand it, heading up the GA unit. What are your standout plans for the GAU over the next 12 months?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, it's been a very busy 5 months. I think really one of the first priorities and one of the things we've been doing an awful lot on and will continue to in the short term is how we can help the industry with COVID recovery and really trying to enable the safest return to flying that we can. And there's been a huge amount of activity, to be honest, that's gone into that. So throughout the pandemic, we have run 5 key stakeholder workshops specifically on COVID, where we have been talking about, what are we concerned about when it comes to getting back into the air? How can we promulgate, key safety messages to the community? So we've run those 5 workshops. We also have done a number of webinars. I think you came to one of them, the virtual voyage. And I'm pleased to say we got to 2,000 people by doing that. And again, there was a lot of information there about returning to the air safely. And we had, I think, about 100 questions that came in, which we were able to answer. We also put a lot of that content into a special edition of the Clued Up magazine, so a COVID recovery magazine, which we printed and got out to 10,000 pilots. And there was a digital version as well. And we put out exemptions like 1416, 1418, which gave you, a different revalidation criteria that you could use if you were a pilot with a rating that was due to expire. So there's been a lot of activity there. And I think I go through all those examples because actually comms were sharing with me at the beginning of this week that through doing all of that, we apparently have been able to touch 33,000 end users directly, which we're just delighted about because, communication is just such a key part of what we do and how we try and mitigate safety risks. So that's really been kind of priority number 1, and we put a lot of work into that. And then in parallel, what we've also been doing and what we're going to really be focused on over the next 12 months is setting up the new GA change program. And the activity in that program is very much based on what's come out of the consultation that we put out to the community last December, which was looking at what opportunities we have since leaving the EU and leaving EASA. And we've got quite a lot of content that we've put out into our consultation response document that came out on Monday. But briefly, we've got a couple of strategic programs around simplifying, FCL licensing, looking at pilot medical declaration and how it's used. Alongside that, we've got about 15 tactical projects. We've had an awful lot of feedback about being clear on how we communicate, things like the Skyway Code. We're going to create another version of that actually for the airworthiness side because we get a lot of good feedback about that document. So we've got a lot of sort of tactical projects, and the way I would describe those is sort of medium complexity. We'll aim to deliver on those in the next 12 to 18 months. So spinning up that program, pace of delivery, and getting those things out is what we'll be focused on. And then I think finally, really, it is business as usual, keeping our oversight running and going out there and understanding from operators how COVID has impacted them and reviewing that as a team and really optimizing how we work as a team. I have a huge team of technical experts, and we need to optimize how we work together because some of the things we're trying to tackle are quite complex. The more people you have in a room thinking about a problem, the better. So it's really optimizing the team. So I think COVID recovery, GA change program, and then our oversight business as usual, optimizing the team is going to be top of mind for the next 12 months.
After I watched the virtual voyage, I wrote the CAA letter. I don't know if you've seen it or not. But one of the things I wanted to talk about was flight crew licensing. That has to be one of the most complex, most awkward, most hardest to understand areas, and something which presumably no one at the CA is super proud of, going, this is the world leading as it should be, there's no need to change. So are you going to address flight crew licensing? And the other thing is, my understanding is, and I may be wrong, that those of us who used to have a CA national PPL were asked a while ago to change that for an EASA PPL at £77 cost, I think. And now we'll probably be asked over the next 2 years to pay another £77 to change it back to another CA PPL, which we had a little while ago.
I think you raise a number of good points there. And I mean, broadly, what I would say, and we're in agreement here, is that the whole GA licensing landscape is far too complex. We feel that at the CAA. And actually, what was really interesting and quite heartening to see is how aligned we are with the community on that, because the number one thing that they told us from the recent consultation is simplify and rationalize FCL licensing. So that is our number one strategic program. It's the first thing that we're going to start doing to look at how we do that. So on a complexity standpoint, we are in agreement there. And I think what I would say to the community is it is complex because we have got the two regimes that run, in parallel, that run together, of what used to be EASA licenses and national licenses. And we need to look at, is it the right thing to continue to have those two? And how do we make it less complex, more accessible, a better user experience when you come to the CAA and you get a license? And for many people, that's their first interaction with the CAA. So we do want that to be positive. So it's very much something we will be focused on.
Another area that's not particularly an easy area to deal with, but one that I think is very important, is CAP 1404, which is really effectively the way the CA deals with airspace infringements. Now, we all know none of us like airspace infringements. None of us think they're good. But I would put it to you that the way that CAP 1404 has been applied over the last couple of years has not done the CA any favours with regards to the relationship between the regulated and regulator.
Yeah, and I'm also glad you're raising this, Ian, because it's just one of the number one topics that, to be honest, when I talk to any GA stakeholder, they raise this, infringements and their concern. And look, we know we need to do better at the CAA. This is clearly an area we need to improve. And there's a number of things I think we need to do to try and do that. I think the first thing is we need to show the community that we're listening, that we hear the feedback, and that we are actually using that to change what we do publish. So the way we're doing that at the moment is we've done a complete end-to-end review of CAP 1404, which is the main document that contains the infringement process. We will be sharing that with the community shortly in the next couple of weeks. And also alongside that, there will be a narrative document that just explains the process, what we do and why we do it, and also a Mythbuster Q&A, which looks at some of the misconceptions around the process and hopefully tries to make that clearer. So I think really showing that we hear that feedback and we integrate that into continual improvements. It can't be that we just relaunch it this one time. We have to do that continually. I hope will go some way to help. I think, secondly, we need to be more transparent. And one of the things you will see in the 1404 rework is we're going to include a workflow of exactly what we do end to end and which parts of the CAA are actually making decisions. So we can be really transparent about exactly what happens and who is making decisions, which I think we need to do. And finally, we really need to work on the how we communicate, because, you said it yourself, no one thinks infringements are a good thing. We know there's a safety risk. We do need to communicate clearly when one has occurred, but how do we do that, but also soften some of the language and think about how we get the message across clearly, but do it in a firm but sort of kind way, in the best way we can. So I think looking at the how, being transparent and continually updating our documents is really what we need to do. And then also, I would ask for your help in, getting some of the numbers out there, because when you do look at this and the average number of infringements per year, it is less than 0.5% that end up in a prosecution and less than 4% that end up with a license on hold. So the actual numbers out there are quite small. And I think it's helpful for us to share that, but then of course, sharing that alongside the clear message that we know we need to do better, and the things I've outlined, I hope to improve things.
It seems to me that the infringement issue is something that will only really be solved by the pilot population working with the CAA, working with the air navigation service providers, and actually addressing it all as a team. And I think for that to happen, everyone needs to firmly believe that they are working towards the same goal in a just and open way. And just culture needs to be applied properly. And I think that's probably fallen down a bit in the past.
I don't disagree with you. I think we need to do exactly that.
Excellent. Well, I look forward to a positive engagement on resolving the infringement problem to everyone's satisfaction.
That's the aim.
In a fair and just culture manner would be amazing. Another interaction that pilots tend to have with the authority is around medicals. We had a bit of a let's call it a hiccup a little while ago when there was some changes to the PMD, which I think this week have been rechanged or reclarified back to normal. And I also believe there are some teething problems with the introduction of Selma, both from a pilot point of view and from an AME point of view. Are we going to get that resolved fairly soon, do you think?
Yes, and again, I'm also glad that you brought this up. So, I mean, there's two separate things going on here, and there's a couple of things I think it's worth being clear with the community on. We do know that the PMD issue recently wasn't communicated in the best way, and for any confusion, we really do apologise. What we were really looking to do was to regularise a decision that was made back in 2016. So it wasn't about reversing or changing a decision. It was the fact that we had a sub-2-ton criteria that could be used against pilot medical declaration that really we'd only enable through our website and through our CEA form. So it was just about regularising that decision and ensuring that it was being used in the right way. So hopefully the exemptions that went out, I believe it was yesterday, have made that clear to the community. And then in terms of Selma, there have been some teething problems, and really I just would like to apologise on behalf of the CAA. It hasn't been quite the launch that we were hoping it would be, but what we are doing is we put a number of workarounds in place, and the team are working flat out to get the issues that we do have to resolution. And I'm very happy to get you a more detailed brief, from our comms department on what they are doing.
I'd much prefer to hear from pilots and AMEs that everything's fixed and going smoothly,
okay.
Which I think you probably would as well.
Yes, I would.
Somehow. Finally, one of the questions is an area that's concerning an awful lot of people at the moment, and that's drones. And as you establish the drone unit, you're probably in a great position to answer these questions. How are we going to move towards integration rather than segregation? How are we going to do it quickly? It seems to me Class G airspace is well understood, and if the drones want to operate in Class G airspace, then just abide by Class G rules. And does anyone at the CA understand that the T in TDA stands for temporary?
Yes, I'm glad you've raised this. Look, the long-term plan here is integration, and you've put that well. And temporary danger areas are a temporary means really of segregation, and they are not an ideal long-term solution for anyone really, whether you look at the RPAS community or you look at the GA community, because they are temporary and they're a method of segregation. There's some improvements that we can make in how they're currently used, and very recently we did run a cross-community discussion where the GA Alliance actually came in and spoke to our key RPAS stakeholders just to talk through how they could maybe run the targeted engagements in a slightly more transparent way, and some of the short-term improvements we could make. So we are addressing the sort of shorter term improvements, and then what we need to do in the longer term is work on the roadmap towards integration. So whether we move from potentially temporary danger areas to something like the use of TMZs, transponder mandated zones, and then test some of the technology that will eventually enable us to move towards integration. And for us, that's the pathway that we need to follow to enable commercial, routine, beyond visual line of sight RPAS operations, but in a way that allows people good access to airspace, isn't disruptive for all, and that's really what we're working on. And we are working closely with government on aspects like the Future Flight Challenge. You may have heard of that, which is all about testing the technology to work out how we can do that.
When do you think that the pilot population watching this will be able to see some tangible results of the work, be it the post-Brexit survey, or when are we going to see some results? Because the survey is great and the consultation is great, but we need action, and we need change, and we need clarity, and we need simplicity.
Yeah, so I think what I would say is that's why we have deliberately in the consultation response document really categorised what we're doing, because what we want to do is set expectations around timelines and what we can deliver. So what you'll see in the consultation response document is a number of quick wins, one of which is the ability for NPPL holders to use Part 21 aeroplanes, which we've already executed on. The Sarah D issue is something we've also executed on. So you will see the quick wins that we are aiming to get out very quickly. You will see changing ways of working. We've categorised them where we're aiming to change things we do at CAA to make them more efficient. Then you will see tactical projects, which we aim to deliver on the next 12 to 18 months. and strategic ones which will take a bit longer. So our aim in categorising that way is to be really clear about expectation around delivery and what we think the complexity is. And we will use our website, and we will use the GA advisory partnership that we have to give continual updates about where we get to with our delivery programme.
It's taken quite a while to organise this chat and the interview. So maybe we could begin now and set one out and say, yeah, maybe in 6 months' time we can have a kind of midterm report about how things are going.
Absolutely.
And chat to you again.
Yeah, very happy to do that. And we work very closely with Alex and comms, both of us, and we do a press release every quarter on what we're delivering, and I think that's coming out in the next week. So of course, very happy to do that. It's been good to talk to you today.
You too. Thank you very much for joining us. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed that, please give us a like, leave a comment and subscribe.